Well, I'm Andrew Phillips, and I'm a local historian, and I've written a book about Jumbo and how it was built and the water supply down the ages of Colchester. And it's interesting to stand here with Jumbo rearing up behind us, high in the sky, the largest or the tallest surviving water tower in Britain, a Victorian water tower anyway. Right down there where the motorway traffic is roaring underneath us was the pumping station which brought the water up eventually to Jumbo. Once you get to Victorian times, the population of British towns grows very fast. Here we are, back on the top of the hill. You can probably just see the top of Jumbo through the trees. And we're in one of many Colchester graveyards. And they were closed in the 1850s because they were full. And in Colchester, the town did not expand, it actually expanded inwards. And from the air, you can see all these tiny red-tiled houses built of wood, clustered together, and houses built next to houses, and you get enormous overcrowding. As a result of which, people in the centre of town who've dug wells are also digging cesspits which they use as lavatories. And obviously, it doesn't take long for the contents of the toilets to get into the wells. And the net result of that is massive outbreaks of a terrifying illness called cholera. It's actually very easy to cure. It's actually very hard to catch. The only way you got cholera is by eating or drinking something contaminated with human sewage. And yet, you have enormous cholera outbreaks in the 1830s, another one in the 1840s. In Colchester, something like 90 people died in a very short space of time. Goodness knows how many others, recovered in some way. And cholera gets everyone, even if you're rich or poor. So the whole town and community had a serious need to have water right here. And I'm looking up at Jumbo, right there. And before Jumbo, on the ground, there was an enormous reservoir because they pumped water from the springs down the hill up to a large reservoir, and Jumbo came later.
Well, here we are at the level of the engineers' room, right below the tank. And this is where the engineers would come in if they want to control the water, turn the water on, turn the water off, go into the tank. And there's still a few things to see here. If we go over to this corner, we can still see some of the original cast iron pipework that supplied the tank. And this is the northwest corner of the tank. And these pipes were put in 1882, 1883, when Jumbo was built. And you've got 3 pipes here. And the one on the right-hand side is the original 12-inch pumping main that brought water right from the bottom of Balcon Hill right up to the tower. It had to raise water nearly 250 feet right to the top of the tank. And then you've got a 12-inch delivery main coming down off of the tank, which is taking water to all the buildings in Colchester. And right in the centre, sort of slightly towards the back, is a 9-inch overflow pipe, which, if the tank filled up too much, then it would overflow through that 9-inch pipe, and that went right the way down. And outside of Jumbo, where the theatre is, there used to be a big open reservoir, and the overflow went into that reservoir. And in addition to that, there used to be an enormous guttering, a big cast iron and concrete guttering that went round the tank originally. It was massive, you could walk along it. and it weighed over 50 tons, and all the water from that guttering used to filter through the tank and go into this 9-inch overflow pipe down into that pond there. If you just look up, we can see the massive steel girders that supported the tank. I mean, the tank was made up of about 500 cast iron plates all bolted together, and all these steel girders weighed over 200 tons, and the water itself, when that tank was full, would itself have weighed about 1,000 tons. So it's an enormous amount of weight that this structure, thankfully the brick structure is enormous, and it obviously did the job. This is a bypass valve. So what normally happens, when the tank is in full operation, this bypass valve is shut firmly, the water pumps right up into the tank, and it comes down this delivery pipe. But whenever they want to work on the tank, if they want to paint the tank or clean it out or anything like that, they have to empty the tank. And what they then do, they shut this valve, they shut this one, and the pumping main, high pressure, then they open the bypass valve, and the water comes up here, cuts through here, and goes straight down into the system. The only problem with that, when water goes up into jumbo, it can sit in the tank and it will gravitate down through the system at a lower pressure. When they shut these valves and open the bypass valve, you are getting high pressure mains pumping directly into the distribution system, and when that happened, that's when they had all the big blow-ups. The mains would break, there'd be a 6-inch or 10-inch main in the high street burst and shooting water 50 feet above the houses. That was a problem they had to deal with, but they had to do that whenever they were pumping directly into a closed main.
Why was Jumbo the water tower built? Well, the town needed a constant water supply, a storage facility against public health, the risk of fire. But what finally did it was government legislation. The government said that all boroughs had to provide their town and district with an adequate water supply. This was the basis on which the borough purchased the waterworks at great expense from its private owners, and began the long process which led to the building of this enormous Victorian water tower, an incredible achievement in engineering terms and building terms, and today the largest surviving Victorian water tower in Britain. While this was being built, it suddenly occurred to the rector of St Mary's at the Wall, the church which is below us and is today the Arts Centre, and his rectory stood right next door to the church where the Mercury Theatre is today, and he realised that this vast edifice was going to be built within 100 yards of his back garden. And he was terrified, as many people were, not just that it was unsightly, but it was dangerous. And he wrote a famous letter to the paper denouncing it, and he said, we must not have this Jumbo in the end of our high street. Jumbo was an African elephant, which was in London Zoo. It was an enormous elephant and gave kids rides, and there was a bit of a Jumbo mania. And so from that day to this water tower has been known to everybody, not as the Balkan Water Tower, but as Jumbo. And when the building was finished and a large little wooden observation tower was put on top of that they put a weather vane, and they made a beautiful weather vane of a gilded elephant. And apparently it had pink eyes, and it's still there today.
So this is the entrance to Jumbo, and one of the first things that people see when they look here, there's a tablet on the wall just above the door there that says Water Tower 1882, and it's a bit of a misnomer really, because they may think that's when it opened, but it didn't open until September the following year in 1883. And basically how it started, building work started, well, we know this, in June 1882, and that was to start off the brickwork. The brickwork was carried out by a local building firm called Everett's the Builders, and about June 1882 they started doing the foundations, and the foundations go down nearly 20 feet below the tank, and they're a mixture of brick and concrete. The foundations were finished by about August of 1882, and then they started on the brickwork of the tower. The brickwork itself goes up about 90 feet, but to the top of the tank it's at least 100, and it's more than that if you include, you know, the little room on the top. But the brickwork, 90 feet, was finished by about March of 1882, and then of course they started on the tank. The brickwork, the total number of bricks was about 1.2 million bricks. The tank itself was provided by Mumfords, a local engineering company, but whether it was a bit beyond him, but he subcontracted out the making of the plates for the tank to a firm in Newcastle. The chairman of the Waterworks Committee was James Wicks. And James Wicks thought it would be a lovely idea to have a little bricklaying ceremony when they started building Jumbo. The plan was to lay several bricks with the initials of all the committee members on. Now, somebody on the committee said, "Oh, you can't do that. You know, that's not your responsibility. You haven't got permission to do that." And of course, lots of the conservative members of the committee didn't like the idea, because that probably, you know, they didn't think of it. So Wicks probably thought, all right, I'll put it to one side. And then about 3 months later, Wicks finally got his own way, and he had his bricklaying ceremony. And those bricks, they're called the Corporation bricks. And people who live in Colchester have probably walked around this building thousands of times in their life, and they've never seen them. And the reason why they haven't seen them, because they're not down below where they should be, they're about 30 feet off the ground. Because by the time Wicks got his way and had his bricklaying ceremony, Jumbo was 30 feet off the ground. It was 3 months later. And you've got to imagine these elderly gentlemen in their big top hats probably climbing up rickety wooden ladders up onto a platform to lay their bricks. Shall we go and have a look at them? Let's go and see what it is, just around the corner here, and we'll see these bricks. So we're standing here with our back to the Balkan Gateway, and if you look up, it's about 30 feet or just above, you'll see a row of bricks. There's 15 of them. They're called the Corporation bricks, and you can see the initials of various committee members at the time. And just to pick out one or two for you, if you look on the extreme right-hand side, right on the corner, there's a brick there with the initials HJE. That was Henry Everett, the builder. And other local names that people may know, the third brick in from the right, TM, Thomas Moy, used to be a famous coal merchant down the Hythe. If you come along almost to the centre, there's JBH, John Bawtry Harvey. He was a very well-known public reformer. And I can see also Upper Higham, JK, John Kent. People heard John Kent Blaxall. So yeah, I thought that was that's quite a nice little touch there, a nice little story behind it. I mean, you just have a look at the sheer size of this corner foundation. Each 1.2 million of these bricks, and because of the sheer weight they had to carry, each one of these bricks had to be manufactured so that it could withstand a crushing rate of 25 tonnes.
Hello, my name is Tony Farrer. I'm a civil engineer by profession. I came to Colchester around about 1982, 1983, at a time that Anglian Water was transforming from an engineering water operator, in fact, into a customer services driven utility. Well, this is the original Balkan building where the boreholes and wells were positioned, and in fact still are positioned. The building, as you can see, is in the style of Jumbo, although it was actually built quite a time before then. And in fact, the whole site has got a long tradition of being involved with the water supply in Colchester. As I said, the wells and boreholes are there now. And the old steam engines that used to be in the other side of the building, they were the ones that originally pumped water up into, first of all, into the town itself, and then when Jumbo was built, actually into Jumbo. I mean, it's an integral part of the Jumbo story, and it in fact was here before Jumbo, and in fact it carried on in use after Jumbo. They're not built anymore for the simple reason that they are just very expensive in terms of pounds per gallon or pounds per cubic metre of water. They are very, very expensive. And with the improvement in electrical security, the availability of electrical supplies and control systems, then the need to ensure a pressure by a tower is no longer valid, and straightforward reservoirs with pumping systems are equally as competent. In the end, so I came here about 1982, 83. There was that rapid development in Colchester at that time. And this really, there was two effects upon Jumbo because of this. First of all, the demand on the tower, the customers' demand increased significantly, both because of development towards the south of the town, but also because people were generally using more water. Washing machines, dishwashers, and so on were coming into quite wide use now. And so the demand of individual people was going up. Therefore, that meant the quantity of water, or the area, the quantity of water which Jumbo had to feed rose significantly. But not only was it having to supply more water, but critically, the inflow coming into the tower fell off drastically for two reasons. The Jumbo was fed from the Hawksley Reservoir, which is north of Colchester, beside the Sudbury Road. And that reservoir, the Hawksley Reservoir, was filled from Stour sources along the river there. At this time, the EU, European Union, was introducing much more stringent water quality controls, and as a result of that, the Balkan source, which was initially the primary source for Jumbo, had to be taken out of use because of a high fluoride content of its water. As I said, Jumbo was facing two challenges. The output from it was going up significantly, and the amount of water coming in was also dropping off very significantly as well. And as a consequence of that, Jumbo was just about filling at night. Then because of that demand, Jumbo was falling, it was emptying very, very quickly. And by about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, it was empty. And so Jumbo was no longer functioning as a water tower, which again is perhaps a bit of a disappointment again, knowing now the history of it and how it was built and the ceremony and the arguments and the fights that went on to build it, to actually just take Jumbo out with no ceremony, no celebration of its function within the Colchester. It was a shame, really. As I said, all we did was just close the valve down one day and went back to the office, and that was it. It would have been nice, in hindsight, to have perhaps done something a little bit more significant to celebrate the years that Jumbo had been in service to Colchester and to the people of Colchester.